All right, good morning, GPAR. Matt Braden here, Thursday morning. So happy to have so many faces here with us for our coffee talk, special edition this morning. But before we get into that, just some housekeeping items to take care of. First, we need everybody to keep themselves on mute during the course of the conversation here today. So if you guys can all help us out with that, that would be dynamite. Code of ethics, shift gears real quickly. Code of ethics deadline is rapidly approaching. Most of our members have taken care of it, but we still have just a touch under 1,000 left that have to complete that code of ethics requirement. If you've already done so, please get that certificate of completion to Donna. If you haven't done so, we're having a class on Friday. What's that? Tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock. We would love to see that room nice and full and have you guys take care of that requirement. We'll have another one later on in this, November. That will be an evening class. So please, let's get that squared away so that we're not trying to knock on doors as we're getting very, very close to the deadline. So code of ethics, if you've taken care of it, wonderful. If not, let's do that soon. So let's get to what we're here for today, and that's coffee talk. Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning, Matt. Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us. Good morning, Mr. Mayor. How are you?
Pretty good, thank you.
Good. Thank you for joining us this morning. So GPAR, we love to talk real estate. So let's talk about a little bit about our successes. We'll talk about affordable housing, and then we'll end it off with some more aspirational ideas for the city. So with the successes, let's talk about the wholesaler legislation that was signed into law last year. Thank you for doing so. GPAR was an advocate for this legislation. Can you share with us since then where things are now with the city since it's been enacted?
Well, for a little context, the residential property wholesaler license has been available from the Department of L&I since January of 2021, as required by the bill. This license can be obtained online or in person. As part of the amendment, the Fair Housing Commission has been tasked with maintaining a do not solicit list, and they're exploring ways that the city can use an online platform to ensure easy access for residents and expedited notice to potential licensees. That's about where we are at the moment.
Okay, good. Hopefully we have a lot more licenses and protecting more property owners. Moving on to rental properties. It's been a huge focal point in the city council, including rent control. Do you have a position on this?
I mean, basically what we're trying to do is prevent evictions, because evictions simply just put people on the street, make the communities more unstable. Working hard to keep residents from losing their homes by investing hundreds of millions of dollars over 5 years for home repairs, rental assistance, eviction and mortgage diversion, support for people experiencing homelessness, and affordable housing development. We've also implementing a small landlord loan program that will provide assistance to small landlords to make capital improvements in exchange for keeping future rents affordable. As for rent control, if and when city council proposes something, we'll of course take a look at it. I don't, as you know, the mayor does not, excuse me, legislate. It's up to council to legislate, and we try to kind of model that. We kind of try to form that legislation to where it's acceptable for everybody. And I'm proud that Philadelphia is a national model for receiving, and it's receiving well-deserved attention for our work on housing and eviction and creating a rental assistance infrastructure ready to serve thousands of residents in need. I know that is a shared priority of Council President Clark, who launched the Neighborhood Preservation Initiative last year with the same mission. And because Council members Brooks, Gautier, and Gim come together with a bold package of legislation, the Emergency Housing Protection Act stabilized rents, created an eviction diversion program, and ensured that Philadelphians were able to stay in their homes during an uncertain time.
Okay.
And actually, one other addendum.
Go ahead.
If we get, I mean, if Congress can get the infrastructure bill passed, will be a lot more money for affordable housing and for assisted housing, which will help us get more and more people off the street. I mean, our homeless situation is severe compared to some other cities. Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, LA. We're nowhere near that. but it does not excuse us for having as many people on the street as we have. And we're working hard every day to get that done. But that federal legislation providing those additional resources would be a great help in us providing more affordable housing or housing for homeless and affordable housing for people.
So are you talking about the Build Back Better plan with
Build Back Better.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
And if you
just-
if you want to add something.
Yeah, so just a couple things. One, it is the Build Back Better plan. There's $150 billion in there for housing. Frankly, we could use all of that here in Philadelphia. And although we wish there would be more money, it's more money than we've seen in decades. And it's wonderful to finally have a federal partner because we have not had that for a long time. I just want to say one thing in reference to the whole rental housing picture is, we recognize that the vast majority of our rental housing, our affordable rental housing is actually provided by the private market and small landlords on the private market. So I think, some of the things that the mayor spoke about is why we're so, proactive about setting up rent assist, but also landlord working capital and other types of loan programs, because we know that, yes, we want to support tenants and keep them in their homes, but we also know that we need to support those small landlords. As we've seen coming out of the pandemic, we have a record number of those small landlord properties coming on the market as for sale. And, we just can't afford to lose those affordable units. So we know that we've got to pay attention to both sides of the equation, both the tenant and the landlord.
So these loans that you were talking about, are they specific for the tenants or
no, it goes to the
both?
it goes to the landlord.
Okay.
And you can get more information on PHDC's website, Philadelphia Housing Development Corporation. If you just Google that, their website will pop up. And it provides, we did have two programs and we've now combined them into one. One was sort of a working make repairs program, and the other was more of a working capital get through some operational difficulties, and we've combined them into one. So it's non-recourse. It's not a huge amount of money. I think we increased it to $50,000. I think there had been around a $25,000 cap, but I think we've increased it. But you can get this money, and I think for a certain amount of time, it's interest only in exchange for affordability commitment.
Okay. So and this is for either one of you, what will the city do to bring those dollars from the Bring Back Better plan to Philadelphia? Is there anything? I mean, I know you said we want all of it. I mean, I would love to see all of it too.
Yeah.
First they have to pass it.
Yeah.
And I think you'll see a more aggressive effort to pass it after the results of Tuesday's elections. I'm hoping that they realize that their lack of action affected both the Virginia governor's race and the very close nature of the New Jersey governor's race, and does not bode well for Democrats in the midterms unless they either compromise, get something passed, or blow up the filibuster and get something passed. So it's up to them at this point.
In addition to the programs that we currently have here in Philadelphia, is there anything else that is being talked about?
Yeah, so
to address the
it,
affordable housing.
Yeah, most of it is sort of the traditional things which we get sort of through a formula. There is sort of an innovation pot of money that we can compete with, but it's competitive, and you have to show that you are doing things to promote new development in your city. And unfortunately, we have seen some things get introduced in our zoning code that go in the opposite direction. So some of the things that HUD calls out specifically is allowing for, duplex or even, maybe up to 4 units in single family zoning, getting rid of parking requirements, those kinds of things that increasing density. So things that I think theoretically folks understand and get more supply means that the price potentially goes down, right? Just basic supply and demand, you increase supply, you have more of it, the price gets more reasonable. But we've sort of been trending in the opposite direction recently with our zoning code and what's been introduced on it. So I think that's a question mark about whether Philadelphia will be able to compete for those additional dollars if we don't sort of do things in our code to further foster development. That being said, it's a two-way street. We know a lot of the reaction that we're getting with the zoning code is because, you know, existing residents kind of feel overwhelmed by the development that's happening, feel like it's not happening to them, feel like it's not happening in cooperation with them. And so I think, you know, that's an ongoing, we got to figure out how that works for everybody. But even though a lot of the money is formulaic, you know, we have in Philadelphia, I think we've proven, I think our best chance of getting dollars is what we've done, right? We've proven we can get the money out the door. We've proven we can be creative, and we've proven we can be effective. And we've had Secretary Fudge from HUD. I think she's been here 2 or 3 times already.
Yeah, 3 times.
Yeah, 3 times, which is incredible, right? And I think she sees the great work that we're doing here and is seeing a lot of the things that we're doing and going around the country and saying, hey, you should see what Philadelphia is doing. So I think those are the kinds of things that are going to help us be able to have a spotlight on us and bring more of those dollars home.
I also think the playing with the tax abatement was a mistake. I just honestly believe it. And I understand the inherent feelings that people have about its unfairness, but in the end, what it's done is created a logjam on permits and other things that water and streets and other departments need to provide because people are rushing to get to the deadline. I think it was one of those things that the city did 20 years ago that actually worked both on a commercial and residential side. And there was this, you know, apparently overwhelming opinion that something needed to change for fairness sake. I think it's created confusion. I think it's created congestion in the housing development market. And I think it's created less possible spaces for development that I just wish we'd go back to where we were. But
Well, we would love
interrupt for one moment. We need to know who's here with the mayor. The mayor has some folks from his staff
too.
And Ann jumped right in with answering some questions, and I know we have Michael there. So, Ann,
well, you all know Ann. So
yeah. So Ann, if you could just give us a really quick, this is who I am, this is what I do, and then Michael, if you could do the same as well, that would be dynamite.
Yeah, hi, I'm Ann Fadulin. I'm head of planning and development for the city. So I oversee all things development, several of the affordable housing agencies. I do not oversee the Philadelphia Housing Authority, but have a wonderfully close working relationship with them. Zoning, historical commission, all of that kind of stuff.
And I'm Mike Rashid, Commerce Director for the city. And we work most closely with business attraction, business retention, workforce development, and minority, trying to develop more Black and brown businesses and minority contracting in the city.
Fabulous. Thank you. And we're glad you're here because all of it ties in with real estate and what we do, what our members do. You know, businesses are important, keeping small businesses in the communities, supporting them. They provide jobs, they provide services for the communities that they're in there, you know, that the neighborhoods they're in. Eventually it moves real estate. I wanted to talk a little bit about what Ann, you know, the monies and the programs and everything. GPAR would love to help out. You let us know what you need from us, you know, to get some of those dollars here, because affordable housing is an issue. The inventory is an issue for us. It's tougher for first-time home buyers. We do have some things that we're working on the state level, you know, to encourage first-time homeowners with programs, the first-time home buyer programs. Is there anything else that the city is looking at to kind of support the first-time home buyers? Because in real estate, they really kickstart the whole real estate cycle. So we need them purchasing. A lot of them, you know, we hear first-time home buyers, they don't understand mortgages. There's programs they don't understand. Is there anything in Philadelphia that is any programs or anything to support those first-time home buyers? Ann,
are you aware of any? I mean, I look, yeah. I know part of the problem is something we want to happen, but then when it happens, people complain about it, and that's the increasing value of property. I mean, I know I lived in South Philadelphia. My kids live in South Philadelphia. My son could not, we east of Broad Street, down in the 2nd, 3rd Front Street area, couldn't afford to buy a house in his own neighborhood where he grew up. Now, is that a bad thing or is that a good thing? Do we want property values to be higher? I think. But when they go up higher, then people complain I can't afford to buy a house in the neighborhood I grew up in. So it's kind of a conundrum that we have to deal with. And if you aware, I'm not aware of, Ann knows all about housing and development. So
yeah, so thanks to our partnership with you guys, our Philly First Home program was a huge beyond success, right? So we are bringing that back.
Awesome.
You guys were so good at that we just burned through the money very quickly. But we are bringing that back probably, we're hoping to in first quarter of 2022. The reason that we're not able to bring it back sooner is because, as many of you are aware, a key component of that is having the buyers go through housing counseling so they understand some of the things that you were just mentioning, Stephanie, the mortgage process, budgeting, that now you're going to be responsible for maintaining your house, right? If something happens, you can't call your landlord, you're your landlord. And so just going through that process. And right now, our housing counseling agencies are beyond capacity dealing with rental assistance program. They're helping, tenants fill out applications and get through that process and providing information. So there's just, unfortunately, there's no capacity in our system to handle Philly First Home. But that will be coming on board, like I said, in the new year. And so we look forward to your cooperation with that. And then again, in Build Back Better, part of that housing dollars is to provide some type of down payment and closing cost assistance. Exactly what that's going to look like, I'm not sure. There's been talk of it being a tax credit, which frankly, I'm not exactly sure how that would work, because again, if folks are required to have the dollars up front and then they get a credit for it on their taxes, that could be a lift. And so I think we want to maybe work with you guys when we see what comes out and do some advocacy around what we think would be most workable. And then also, if it is something like that, how we would work with our local and our state program to help those buyers get over the hump, right? In order to then maybe then access that tax credit. I think the other thing, that it would be great if we got some feedback from you guys is, some of the things we're seeing in the market is not just, due to just ridiculously low inventory on the market, right? Is that people not necessarily even just coming up with a down payment, but you need 100% cash, right? And how do you, we're worried about particularly our first-time home buyers and our minority home buyers that may not have access to that generational wealth, is how do you compete in a market that requires you to show up with cash for the whole amount? And we don't know that that's going to be sort of going forward for the long term, but I think those are some things we're thinking about. We are also going to start rolling out more aggressively now that we have the Neighborhood Preservation Initiative funds, land RFPs and dollars associated with those RFPs in order to help buy down the cost of the property to the home buyer, right? That money's going to be kind of tied to the land, but it's going to go to the home buyer as opposed to the developer to help buy down that purchase price. And then we're also looking at maybe putting out some RFPs for folks that just could develop if they had a little bit of that down payment home buyer assistance without even needing our land or any other thing. We're trying to be as flexible as we can. And we realize it's easy. The money can be more flexible if it goes to the home buyer than if it goes to the developer, because once we're in the construction capital stack, all sorts of stuff gets thrown into that development. And so we're just trying to be creative now that we have some local dollars, and also trying to work more cooperatively with the federal government to say, it's great that you give us more money, but don't then put so many regulations on it that's almost impossible to use it.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up, because to Mr. Mayor's point about buying in the neighborhood that you grew up in, there's opportunity. Where do you see the opportunity to help? Like, I was just thinking, last night, like the land bank and all the
1 or 2 items of concern that I just had in mind.
Sorry about that.
There we go.
All right. All right. And Mayor, you're muted. So if you go to talk, make sure you hit, I think we muted everybody. So make sure you unmute yourself. Anyway, back to what I was saying about the affordability. The land bank, there's land there. Do you see opportunity there?
The land bank is not as effective as it should be. And
Right.
I mean, I'll get in trouble with district council people when I say this, but their ability to determine exactly what property goes into the land bank and what doesn't has been really slowed the process. I mean, the concept of the land bank was this property would go in and it would be available and it would move quickly. But because of tradition, I guess, and custom, district council people want to make sure that, they have the last say in what goes in there and what doesn't. But so, I mean, and I was a member of council for 24 years, although I was an at-large member, I was not a district council member. I do understand their point of view, but land bank has never been as effective as it could have been since its inception because of that process. And we could be moving property much more quickly without the yes or no say so of the district council person. And I don't mean that in any way offensive to any particular district council person. It's just the way the process gets slowed down because they determine what goes in and what comes out.
I mean, I get it for each district. I mean, you want to represent your district, and but then it just sits there and nothing moves forward. We need to move the needle on something. What can we do as GPAR?
So I also think part of it is a misconception that because it's public or city land, you can just get it, right? You get it for $1 and you can just sit on it or do whatever. And it doesn't work that way, right? You get it because you have some ability to redevelop it. And you have to show that you have the ability to redevelop it, right? So you have to show that you have the financing or that, you can insure it and maintain it. And honestly, getting that information is sometimes like pulling teeth. And even when we put out an RFP for something and we get, developers that have done projects before, even getting them to like check all the boxes on the application is like, no, you got to check this. No, you got to check that. It's, it's just sort of getting, to some extent, it's getting over the mindset of, we're doing you a favor by taking this property from the city. Just give it to us because we asked for it. We're not in a position that we can do that. We have to make sure that we are, again, showing, essentially we are sort of protecting the public, right? By trying to make sure that something decent happens in the area and that you have the wherewithal to do it. And you have to show us a few things. And honestly, sometimes that is, we finally get through that nutty political process and then it's like pulling teeth to try to get the information that we need. I would encourage you guys maybe to reach out to Angel Rodriguez, who's our Senior Vice President for Land Management, and have him come talk to you about what the process is.
That would be great. Yeah, we'll definitely have
and I will say this, what the process is today, because one of the other issues is there's probably new legislation, if not every session, at least once a year, that totally changes the process. And that's part of the problem as well, right? We need to just define a process and stick with it and let it work for a little bit, as opposed to continually changing it.
Okay, so as far as affordable housing, we talked about land. Let's talk about schools and public safety. So this all affects real estate and having people, come to the city, move to the city. The taxes, that's a big one. So the taxes, I mean, obviously we have the highest wage tax. And it directly.
In fairness though, it's been decreasing since 1996 and there's not been any suggestion of it going any other way but down. The problem with the wage tax is that it funds so much service that a drastic cut in the wage tax, you would experience, and people in neighborhoods would experience a drastic cut in services. And I think the difficult balance is that, yes, we all want lower taxes. Yes, I don't like when, I look at my paycheck line item and wage tax is what it is. But if you drastically cut it, you're going to have some drastically cut services, which people don't like either. And it's a difficult balance. I think in general, real estate taxes in Philadelphia are reasonable compared to New Jersey or the suburbs. So I think our trade-off sometimes is lower real estate taxes or not as high real estate taxes, and the wage tax, which is again, since Ed Rendell has been cut every single year, except for 1 or 2 years where we froze the cut because of the recession or because of the pandemic.
So instead of like cutting, do you think maybe the structure of it could change? And I mean, do you think we need, because like you said, it's like a mindset, you know, real estate taxes, yes, our real estate taxes are lower than others. But our wage taxes, which hits, you know, the income, somebody's paycheck,
Right.
You know, maybe a shift or maybe, because, you know, out in the counties, they have a separate real estate tax. So, and our real estate tax is all tied in with city taxes, for instance. Yeah.
They're starting to establish wage taxes in the suburbs too.
And earned income, correct.
And earned
Very,
income.
yeah.
I mean,
Right.
and that's prime. And from my perspective, and maybe my Democratic leaning, saying this, if you're cutting taxes for billionaires, somebody's paying for that. And it's probably middle class, working class people are paying for it. But no one complained. Well, not no one, but not as many people complain about the Trump tax cuts as they're complaining about what Biden's wanting to spend on middle class people, on earned income, on child tax credit, on all those things. Somehow that's socialism. And then, but the Republican tax cuts for billionaires is not socialism. I still can't figure out. And because of those federal policies, we have to pick up the slack here because there's less support from the federal government than there could be if billionaires didn't get a tax cut, you know, a number of years ago.
How do you feel about the schools and the taxes, the dollars going to the schools? Because again, this is something that homeowners and, you know, buyers are looking for, good schools. They want to send their kids to a safe school, good schools. How are the tax dollars? I mean, like, and I'm just talking off the cuff, like,
I have
separate it and dedicate it to them.
I had people, well, first of all, part of the conversation has to be that we have not raised real estate tax rates. I have not in 6 years, and I don't intend to in the last 2 years of my administration. However, people's tax bills have gone up because the value of their properties have gone up in assessments, which I think everyone here would agree is a good thing, not the increased taxes, but the increase in property value. And I have people who tell me my property value is increasing. I'm paying more in real estate taxes. I'm moving to Jersey. Oh, good luck. I mean, we see what your tax bill is out there once you do that. But New Jersey's real estate taxes are high, primarily because they fund the schools. So if you want well-funded schools, you got to pay for it. If you can't get them both. Pennsylvania, by constitution, is responsible for fully funding schools. They haven't fully funded schools since maybe Rendell or before. And under Corbett, they actually cut $1 billion out of the education line item. We replaced that as a city over the last 6 years to keep the schools moving and moving forward. All of our schools are not in any condition that we want to see them in. There's a handful and a number of them that are really solid performing schools, and a lot of them struggle. But they struggle because of lack of resources. I believe that education is the primary way to develop a community, period. Because
100%.
we have all these young people who are living in struggling neighborhoods, going to struggling schools. If our schools were pristine and wonderful, and we would grow our way out of poverty in a decade, if that's what we have, but we don't have that, and no one wants to pay for it. And I think that's the big problem. If you look at like Meredith in Queen Village, I mean, the housing values in Queen Village, people will have a bidding war in the Meredith school catchment over buying a house because of Meredith. If we could, hypothetically, if we could do that in every neighborhood in the city, we wouldn't have any problems. Crime, poverty, addiction, it all would go away. But If you go to Harrisburg and talk about funding schools, oh, we don't want, nope, we'd rather give money to charters. Well, that's the struggle we have every year in the budget is how much more money can we get to the schools because they need it. We have older buildings, we have older, we have infrastructure problems that we need to deal with. And we're basically on our own. I mean, Governor Wolf has done his best to help us, but the legislature could care less about education.
So what do you need from, I mean, from the state? Is it?
We need them to we need them to live up to the constitutional requirement to fully fund schools. They don't do it. They've never done it and they don't want to do it. I mean,
Is it only in Philadelphia?
oh, it's in other communities in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I mean, if you look at other states, Virginia, Maryland, some other southern states, I mean, which are more progressive on education, I mean, they fund their schools from the state. And that's why their schools are high performing. New Jersey funds their schools through real estate taxes. That's why their schools are not all of them. I mean, they're not as high performing in Camden or in Newark or in Trenton as they are in other parts of the state of New Jersey, but the state funds the schools. And unless this state is willing to do that, or the federal government overall nationwide is going to invest what they need to invest in schools, we're going to continue the struggle, and it's going to be middle-class people versus poor people versus rich people. It's not the way we should run the government.
No, I think it's important to have these schools. The children, in light of everything that we've all gone through in the past 18 months, and they need a place where they can go feel safe and just be kids. I feel that way about the playgrounds and rec centers too, also in the city, that those should be safe havens for the children. And
well, but think about the ridiculous nature of gun laws in Pennsylvania. I mean, think about the fact that I can walk into a gun store today and get a gun faster than I can get a driver's license in Pennsylvania. If I want a driver's license in Pennsylvania, I have to take a written test, I have to take a driving test, I have to have insurance, I have to do all these things. To buy a gun in Pennsylvania, I got to walk in the door and put cash on the table. That's it. And not only just a handgun, I can buy a military style weapon. We had two police officers shot in the last two or 3 months. One of our officers got shot with an AR-15. The guy is the guy who killed the nurse at Jefferson Hospital and then went out to Parkside Avenue and started shooting up the neighborhood. Had an AR-15 with 3 clips. Our officer, I saw his arm. It was horrible. It was filleted, like it was terrible. And we had another officer just almost killed when a bullet went by his nose from an AR-15. Why should anybody have that? No one should have that. And when I believe that when our founding fathers wrote the Second Amendment, they were talking about single shot muzzle loaded blunderbuss that you had to put the ball in and then put the powder in, and then they weren't talking about AR-15s. If they knew what AR-15s were then, they would have wrote the Second Amendment different. But that's my rant. I apologize. But when I deal with this gun stuff every single day, when a 15-year-old can get a handgun. I mean, when I was 15, I never saw a gun. My friend father was a cop. My friend's father was a police officer. The only gun I ever saw was his. And now kids who are 14, 15, 16 have access to guns. You and I could drive out to Oaks and Trooper this weekend and buy a bag of guns and bring them back into the city and sell them out of my trunk. It's insane. It's really, truly insane. We've taken twice as many guns off the street this year than we've taken off the street last year. And we'll cap out probably by the end of the year at 6,000 guns.
Where are they coming? Yeah, like where are these kids getting the guns from?
I mean, Pennsylvania. As I told you, go to a gun show with me this weekend, and we can buy any amount of guns you want to buy, and no questions asked. And put them in a bag, put them in my trunk, drive into Philly, and sell them out of car. And then people say, "Well, what are you doing about guns?" We can't get a bill passed that requires you to report your gun stolen. Now think about that. If I'm a felon, I can't buy a gun in Pennsylvania, which is a good thing. But if I have a girlfriend or a boyfriend who's not a felon, they can go buy the gun and give it to me, and I can go do all kinds of menacing things with it. If the gun gets traced back to the purchaser, got stolen out of my house, got stolen out of my car, I didn't report it. if you have to report your gun stolen, at least we have a trail of where that gun may be. The legislature kept us from doing it in Philadelphia County ourselves. I'm not even looking to do it statewide, just in Philadelphia County. And straw purchases would be decreased. But Second Amendment people, you know, we can't let the foot in the door. And that's why we're dealing what we're dealing with. One of the reasons why we're dealing what we're dealing.
And if I can just say, the gun situation, safety situation, rising from the gun situation is an economic issue for us. It's really holding our economy down. You know, the number one answer that we get from people when we talk about coming back to work, coming back to the city or whatever, the number one concern people have is safety. Whether it's in the neighborhoods or in the downtown area, they express safety as the biggest concern. And safety doesn't necessarily mean the pandemic, because you know we have precautions against that, whether it's vaccination or the mask. But people are concerned about their physical security, and that's holding down the business activity in our city.
It is. I mean, safety is a major concern for people coming, even myself. It's just, it's not like it was before. It definitely has. And I'm not saying I, you know, walk alone in the middle of the night in the dark, but I'm usually not afraid. And I'm not afraid now. It's just, it's concerning, you know.
Well, I mean, the last time we had homicide rates at this level was during the Rendell administration. Now, you don't remember the Rendell administration in that way. The Rendell administration is remembered as progressive and getting out of financial difficulties and changing the attitude about the city, and we can do, but you know, it was close to 500 homicides back then. And that was horrible back then, and it's horrible now. But this thing goes in cycles, and the constant in the cycles is the availability of guns. It's just it's almost antithetical to have this discussion without talking about guns. And when I bring up guns in the media, they say, "Well, it'll never change." Well, okay, well then it's never going to change. What's going to change on the other end is our ability to get kids educated, trained for jobs, access to jobs, access to opportunities for starting a business, working, you know, at a job that pays a wage that you can take care of your family and have some dignity. All those things will reduce the propensity for someone to pick up a gun. But as long as the guns are that readily available, somebody's going to pick up a gun.
You were saying that, Mr. Kenney.
Excuse me. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor. Go ahead.
No, I say we're talking about the level of homicide that we're having now, and it's a tragedy and it's a crisis. But the threshold was 300. When we were under 300, no one talked about it. But there were still 299 people who got killed that year. But no one talked. The media didn't cover it every day. It wasn't on every news station. It wasn't in every newspaper. It was. But as soon as we hit 300 and started to increase, it's a crisis, and it is a crisis. But the point is that was 295 acceptable? I mean, I don't think one is acceptable.
Right.
And that's the conundrum that we have, is that if you go on a news feed today on your phone, you will see 8 out of 10 items on there is about a shooting or homicide. And that just perpetuates, you know, and I've gone on the news feed and I'll see double homicide in a certain neighborhood. And I went, when did that happen? Because I didn't get any notice last night about this. And then I'll look at the bottom of the story. It's 5 days ago. They're still promoting homicides that happened a week ago. I mean, it's tough. It's very frustrating.
It's tough to watch the news. It's tough to hear these babies, and they really are babies. Yeah, I don't. You know, it's babies killing babies, and they need, like you said, the education. They need to be in school. They need to be, you know, safe. So you were talking about the cycle of violence. So, you know, when Rendell was mayor and it was high.
Well, it was high for a couple of years. It wasn't high every year. It was high for a couple of years in that period.
What was the tipping point that helped get those numbers down? Do you remember? Was it?
I was in council at the time. I don't specifically remember, but I do believe that because we can't control guns and the legislature and the US Congress will not do it, the only options we have is to continue to invest in education, continue to try to figure out ways to interact with our kids so they understand that a dispute, and this has really caused a lot of problems because these social media disputes wind up in killings. There's nothing that anybody on this screen could say about me on social media that's going to make me want to kill them. I might not be happy, but I'm not coming looking for you with a gun. These kids diss each other on social media and then go out and look to kill them. I mean, that's crazy. So we have to figure out a way to intercept that, to get between that, to explain to our kids that there are other ways of dealing with your aggression, dealing with your disputes. The shooting at Lincoln High School, that would have been in my day, and many of your days, would have been a fist fight on the corner of a pizza store. It turned out to be a 66-year-old man shot and killed waiting for a red light. And another kid who would have been in the fist fight shot and critically wounded. I mean, I mean, who brings a gun to school? I never did. It's like, look, it's not our fault. It's our responsibility to deal with it. And we're addressing it in multiple ways. And it's going to take a little bit of time for us. We've had a 6-week trend now where we're trending down. We were like 30% higher, and then we're now about 11% higher. But the number of guns that we're confiscating and the number of arrests we're making for people carrying illegal firearms has doubled since last year. And our police are Look, let me tell you, I'm not always viewed as the most law and order, law enforcement person. I'm a little more on the progressive snowflake side, but our police officers are working their tails off in horrible conditions, in horrible situations where people are suspicious of them, or the relationship between the community and police is not where we want it, but they are out there every single day taking guns out of people's hands and out of their waistbands and putting themselves in harm's way. We've had, again, just 2 officers shot in the last couple months. Thankfully, they all survived. 3 officers, they all survived. But they're working hard, and we're proud of them. But we have to keep on dealing with this and dealing with community members, nonprofits, people working in the communities, to try to get our kids to a point where they understand this is not the way to go, and that you don't want to die when you're 18.
Yeah, full disclosure, my son-in-law is a Philly police officer, and he works in a pretty tough neighborhood, and the community loves him because he's there. And and it's so sad to see the negativity towards the police officers, because I know a completely different side of the coin. So yeah, they are working their tails off, and quality of life is definitely an issue. Another issue for real estate people. The first thing when we're working with clients is, how are the schools and how safe is the neighborhood? And quality of life is an issue. So you were talking about the state having gun laws. Is there anything Philadelphia could do similar to what we did, like wholesalers? Like, that was a real issue that wiped out generational wealth, and we were able to not fix it, but at least address it and put some sort of a spotlight on it. And now the state, even the nation, other associations are coming to Philadelphia, taking a look at our program that we did here, and want to know how they can have that implemented in their cities. So is there anything Philadelphia could do to address, we talk about laws regarding guns, and anything Philadelphia can do?
No, the legislature totally preempted us on every single piece of legislation that anyone's come up with to deal with the word gun. We are preempted from suing the gun manufacturer. We're preempted from 1 gun a month. We're preempted from reporting your gun stolen. We're preempted from dealing with ammunition. It's really insane. I mean, if you look at states like Massachusetts, New Jersey is a good example. States like that who have legislatures who are more open-minded about controlling weaponry, they don't have as much problem in those states. This state is just so pencil-tucky that it's any conversation about it is totally wiped out. And I've not given up totally on it, but I don't depend on it, and I'm not relying on it. That's why we're investing the amount of resources we're investing in, on the ground, grassroots, neighborhood people trying to get to our kids, dealing with our schools, trying to make sure that kids get the right trauma treatment. A lot of this stuff, I mean, think about what some of our kids experience in neighborhoods where, 2 or 3 people in their own street may have been shot and or killed in while they're there. Think about our kids who have to leave the house in the morning to walk to school and are scared to death of what might happen between their home and their school. I mean, that's unconscionable, and we have to address that. And we're doing that with safe corridors, with police and volunteers and school staff. We're doing it with trying to reallocate our police to places where we think there might be problems. But getting between 2 people who are armed, who want to kill each other because they've disrespected one another, is a difficult thing for the police for law enforcement to police. The other problem we have is a good number of homicides happen inside a house. Where a gun's unsecured and a child finds the gun and shoots a sibling, or where it's our domestic disputes are like 100% more. The domestic killings are like 100% more than they were the year before. And that's all inside a home. So that's why mentally unstable people should never have access to a gun. But everybody went out during the pandemic and lined up at gun stores to buy guns to protect themselves from whatever. And they're winding up killing their own family members.
And I think,
Can I make a comment?
as general, now this is like just between the mayor and I, please hold. If you have a question, put it in the chat. Matt will read it. Is it fair to say that everyone, we don't want to see the guns in the hands of children. We don't want to see, I think people who are on the one side of gun control and those who want to keep their guns, I don't think they want to see, the violence that's happening. And I think do you think it's fair to say they're not trusting of the government to make the laws that would kind of meet in the middle? Who do you talk to bring both sides together? We're leaders. We're meant to talk to everyone.
I think you should be able to buy as many hunting rifles or shotguns or whatever you want. I mean, I don't think there's a problem with that at all. If you're using it to hunt, if you're using it to sport shoot, that's great. But a 15-shot magazine and a semi-automatic handgun, I don't see the purpose for that. And what happens is the fear begets more purchase. So I'm fearful that all these other people have this, I got to have it too. And you're going to wind up in a situation where you're going to wind up using it or potentially using it, and then your life has changed. You potentially killed somebody, and so their life has changed, and their families' lives have changed, and your life is going to change because you're going to wind up in jail. So it's all about money. Anything that we deal with that's a negative, drugs, opioids, guns, it's all about people making money. And as long as people can make money doing this kind of stuff, they're going to continue to do it. And unless the government stops them, it'll continue on.
Do we have programs in the schools, that deal with guns prevention?
I don't know about
stranger danger they have in school.
Yeah,
Do they have
those.
anything?
They have active shooter drills, which is something we really shouldn't have in schools.
I know.
But we need
That's
it.
Awful.
We have lockdown training. I don't know from a curriculum standpoint whether or not they don't have gun safety, for example. I don't think they're teaching, children gun safety. Maybe that's something we should look at. But then you get into the realm of, should we be talking about that at all?
To your point, we have drills to keep these kids like a shooter. Well,
right.
If we're teaching them to protect themselves from shooting, they should at least know what it is.
Right.
That they're protecting themselves from.
I don't know specifically of any particular curriculum dealing with handgun safety in the schools. There may be one-offs somewhere where somebody comes in and gives a lecture about what to look for, what to look out for in the home. But no, I don't believe it's part of the formal curriculum of the entire school district.
I mean, I'm aging myself, and we did not have these issues. Like you said, like I never saw a gun until I was an adult.
Yeah.
When my son-in-law, he's a police officer. That's the first gun I saw.
Yeah.
But in school, I mean, you had poison control. I mean, like that was our issue when we were little. We should only have those problems with the green face sticker on like the poison. I mean, it breaks my heart to see these kids go through metal detectors to get into school, that I get a note home from school saying we're going to do the drill today, active shooter, it's really sad. But I think, I don't know, maybe some education in the school about guns and gun safety and, what it does, because like you said, like these kids don't know, like you pull that trigger and your life is changed forever.
Yep.
Like the impact of that it has on their life. All right. So maybe we're not going to solve that problem today, but
No, we're not.
I would love to, but as a parent, I would love to see my children grow up in in a world where there's no, guns in school, and they don't have to like.
I took about outdoor dining.
Yes. We're going to end this on a positive note. And who doesn't love food in Philly?
I think outdoor dining is fabulous. I think it's, even though it happened during the pandemic and we needed to do it, I think it's changed Philadelphia for the better. There are certainly better outdoor dining setups than in some places than in others. And I think we have to kind of standardize what they are and what you can do and what you can't do. Fire department has some concerns about propane and potential car accidents and explosions and things like that. But I think that the ambiance not only in downtown, but in the extraneous neighborhoods on sidewalk cafes and street dining, streeteries, I think has been a terrific outcome of the pandemic. I think it's more European. It's more it just brings people out, and it enables these restaurants that had limited seating to expand their reach and expand their. And the other thing is people sometimes complain about the removal of parking. I understand it, but I don't care, because if maybe you'll use another mode of transportation, maybe you'll Uber or Lyft, or maybe you'll take public transit or a cab, and we'll have less issues of people gridlocked downtown. But I think that it should be here to stay. I know the Councilman Dom, I saw him on earlier, has a piece of legislation, and I know the council president has some views on it. But I think overall, in general, it should be permanent. And I think that it's been a terrific addition to our downtown and to our neighborhoods. There's streeteries in West Philly, there's streeteries in Frankfurt, there's streeteries in Old City, there's stuff up in Northern Liberties. So I think that's something that's been a good outcome of the pandemic, if there's any good outcomes from the pandemic.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great addition. I hope we can figure out a way to keep it safe for everyone and, profitable for the city. It brings people back. They like to be outside, I think, more so than
during the beginning of the pandemic, when the winter was setting in and restaurants were desperate, we kind of just let it free flow. Most of the circumstances, it worked out fine. There's some people went a little farther than they should, or it wasn't a high quality construction as it should, but we can standardize that, get people licensed, and continue moving forward and let people make money. The problem is getting people back to work, and getting people want to work in restaurants again, because I know their staffing issues when it comes to restaurants are difficult. When people were getting checks every month, there was no real incentive to get to go back to work. I think that once that changed, people will start coming back. Our vaccination rates are high comparative to other cities. We're doing really well with first shots and then second shots. Now we're rolling out the boosters and the shots for kids. We have the least racial disparity of vaccinations than any city in the country. So almost as many people of color than not are vaccinated, and that's thanks to organizations like Dr. Stanford and the Black Doctors Consortium, who did a terrific job in convincing people of color in neighborhoods that this is a good thing and it's safe. And they did a tremendous job in getting those rates up. And I think if you read recently, there's a small study that went on about even though our vaccination rates may be lower than the suburbs, our case rates are lower than the suburbs. And I think that's due to masking. And I know masking has become a social and political issue. But I think the fact that we have a mask mandate still has kept our case rates low, even though it's inconvenient to wear a mask indoors. I think that's helped to keep our incidence of cases down. So we're reassessing the mask mandate now. But I think the fact that we've had it longer than the suburbs has kept our case rates down. We're about 200 on average, 200 or so new cases a day. They're not hospitalization cases. Our hospitals are not overwhelmed in any way, shape, or form. So I think we're really starting to edge out of it. I would urge people who aren't vaccinated to get vaccinated and also get your flu shot because this will be a little bit of a rough patch between now and the spring. But I think we're going to be in good shape.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the masks, they're a pain to wear, and yes, we have to wear them, but I feel like this might be a trend that could be, not forever, but in some, like flu, like it makes sense. Cover your mouth. Like who wants to get the flu? Who wants to, going forward, once we get beyond COVID, I think it's not going to be such a weird thing to see people with masks during flu season.
During the pandemic, we had the lowest flu rates.
Yeah.
Than we've had because people were all masked up. I mean, I know in many Asian countries, people wear masks on a regular basis in Japan and in China and Korea, and they're healthier because of it, especially during the flu seasons. So I think it's a shame that it became a political issue. I think it's a shame that it is a political issue that we have school board members being threatened by parents because we have mask mandates around the country. We just kind of keep people safe and healthy. And I think that political leaders have done us all a disservice by making this a political football about people's health and, all the anti-vaxxers, and it's like just kind of silly.
We could go on, and that's a whole nother topic. We have a couple minutes left here, and I always like to end on a positive note. So if you had a magic wand and you could wave it, what do you see? What positives could you share with us? What you see for the future of Philadelphia?
I want to obviously get our violence and gun situation and homicide and shooting situation under control and moving downwards. I want to get all of our schools fully open, get our kids vaccinated, and continue to support education. Want to continue to invest in our infrastructure by moving forward at a faster pace on our parks, recreation centers, and library renovations, which we're doing now. We were somewhat hampered because of the pandemic. I like to see just getting back to caring about each other and treating each other with respect and not having arguments all the time that are nonsensical and not productive. And I think that Philadelphians, are good people, and I think we respect each other innately. But we have to start showing it and be more decent to each other. I like another Super Bowl. I like. That was fun. I'd like to see some additional championships in the city. But I think that overall this holiday season, we're planning a number of things. We have a holiday parade that's coming up. We're announcing today. We got our tree lighting coming up soon. We have a national exhibition of Harry Potter coming in February. We're getting our conventions back. Our hotels occupancy is up. So we're moving in the right direction. And just when I leave here, I got 2 years left. When I leave here, I hope we're close to where we were a number of years ago and in the way we feel about the city and each other.
Well, I think that's a great note to end on. And anything you need from GPAR, anything real estate related, we know a thing or two about real estate, so we're happy to help out in that arena. I thank you for joining us this morning. I hope you come back another time with us. And sure. Michael and Ann, thank you so much for your input. It was great. And we'll probably be talking with you, Ann, in coordination with some of those programs that you talked about.
Great.
So
Right. I look forward to it.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And
go forth and sell.
Yes, thank you. Matt, it's all yours.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Michael, and I think we're going to have you back to pick your brain about a bunch of different things. So keep an eye on your inbox for an invite. And then lastly, in 2022, the National Association of Realtors will be bringing their government affairs institute to Philadelphia. So I think there's a great opportunity to get you guys involved, because it's going to be people from across the entire country who deal with this type of policy stuff. And we're definitely going to have to get you guys into the mix in some shape or form, because there's high level conversations. There's a lot of note comparing, but also too, it's a great opportunity to find out more about what's going on with government affairs and the real estate industry and its intersection. So with that, GPAR, have a great day. Code of Ethics tomorrow. If you haven't done it, we want to see you there. And go forth. Get us some championships, right, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks.